Quick and Early Miracles. We're off site today, and what I wanted to talk about was some stuff that I do when I want to organize my energy or align, quiet my mind. So at different times on the journey, if you would have said like organize your energy, or hey Tracy, organize your energy or align things like that, like there was a component of disbelief or disconnect for me from that, and that it seemed like let's say irresponsible, where there was a separation from the physical. And for me at that time, it was hard to believe, like, okay, working with stuff you can't see is addressing what is, but like fucks if it isn't. And when we look, like what I can say at a grounded level is that the clarity that you have when you are centered, and by centered I mean like within your own body, allows for you to take in information in a more holistic and unbiased way, to explore it and to make a choice that's from a place, like a higher place. And to me, a higher place is one of love and creativity and growth, rather than one of fear and constriction and separation. So all of that is to say, I don't know where you are in your path, but that's how I got from let me try to control these things outside, let me think about these things outside to soothe myself, to a place where like, let me soothe myself and then I'll think about the things outside. So I've written a few things about meditation, one or two, and I talk about it a bit in my broadcasts. And meditation isn't something like exotic, like not yet. I'm not gonna lift up off this ground, I'm gonna stay here, I'm just gonna breathe. And that to me is what meditation is. It's about being here. And these are some little hacks you can use if you have a hard time being here. So one is to assign yourself a circle about arm's reach, just kind of like how I'm drawing my finger out around you, and let this be the boundary of all that is, which means if it's not in that circle, you're not thinking about it. You're allowing, every time your mind runs away, imagine it's like a little excited puppy. You just grab the puppy and you bring it right back here, and you bring it right back here. Jeremiah, hey. So if you're playing along, I'll have you just sit into yourself. That means like drop your weight into your body. So your muscles might be clenched habitually, and so you don't even really know that you're doing it. You don't know that you're suspending your weight. That's one way to say like, I don't trust life, let me like hold myself a little bit up. So I want you to drop yourself into your body, drop yourself into life, give your weight over to whatever you're sitting on or standing on. Like, don't hold you up, like give your body weight over to wherever you are. And then when you take a deep breath, it might first just come from up here. So when you're breathing, if you put one hand on your heart-ish and one hand on your belly and you take a breath, the hand that lifts shows you the depth of your breathing. So I'm pretty trained at breathing. So when I took a breath, this hand lifted, watch. When you take a breath, if this hand lifts, then I want you to wiggle around and imagining your lungs kind of loosening up and them dropping. Like if you've ever seen the bottle constructions they make for formula for babies, like I don't know if they still do this, but 10 years ago they would have a little bag that screwed into a plastic tube, and then it was filled with formula, or maybe the formula came first and then whatever. But it's like, let your lungs kind of just empty and drop. Now do this with your mouth. So if you're just joining, what I'm talking about are some techniques to support you in meditation. And the first thing I said was you're going to draw a circle about the length of your arms the whole way around you, and notice that if your mind starts to crawl to something outside of this circle, you grab it by the little scruff of the neck and you bring it back here. And then I said about giving your weight over to whatever you're sitting on or standing in it. And it's really difficult to notice where you've been suspending it until you're not. So it might take a few iterations for you to be like, okay, I'm giving my weight over to this. One way to think about that is to imagine that you have an inheritance that came to you that's like $500 million, and you'll never have to worry about anything ever again. You have all the safety, security, you have everything you need. And so there's no anticipation of a difficulty. There's no anticipation of impact. There's just like complete trust in life. So there's nothing for you to be on edge on, nothing for you to be on edge about. You're completely surrendered to exactly where you are. Your mind isn't trying to figure out how to get anything or fix anything. You are in a place of allowing that. You're like, you have all the tools you need, so why would you? And then I said about relaxing or tuning into your breath and noticing if it's like uptight, like up top, uptight, or if you're able to breathe down deeper into your diaphragm. Let's say all your breathing's up here today. Ain't no thing, like let it be there. As you move through like your practice or you deepen your practice, you can have it as an intention, like that's the way you're going. The other thing is, often when I'm training a habit or I'm training, like whether it's an action habit or a mental habit, it's not about forcing somebody somewhere. It's about seeing that what they think they're doing by not doing that or by doing something else isn't what they think it is. And it clears the way. With meditation, the number one thing you can explore is what you think you're exploring when you're exploring, which means what you think you're doing with your mind when you're crawling time and space, when you're imagining this scenario or thinking about this conversation or replaying that information. What you think you're doing, you're not. And I have a lot of content about why and how that is. But if you have a really hard time putting down your thought, then grab it, dive the whole way fuck into it and say like, think about thinking. If you can't stop thinking, think about thinking and see what you find. And so that's one way it's like the brain advocates for its own activities. Like, come on, I'm important. What I say is important. It's its own salesman. And the trick is to realize that what it's selling, you don't really want to buy. Often it is counterproductive to your point, what you're trying to do. So if you're just joining, what I'm talking about are some ways to allow for your meditation practice. And to me, that's a way to center before acting. It's a way to center before living, so that when you're making choices, they're coming from a place of awareness rather than one of reaction or one of fear. And then the quality of your choices improves, and then the quality of your experience improves. And in any case, it's almost like, let's say like you have a happy home in your belly. You got a happy home in here. Our culture has conditioned us to leave the happy home to go find the elements of the happy home. And so it makes us think that if we target and push for an accomplishment, if we secure a relationship, if we achieve these different things, then we will feel peace. We will feel that itch inside of like, how do I make this better, is scratched. But if you've pursued any of those things, you've likely found that that's not true, that a new thing then emerges or reveals itself. You get the thing and then it's like, oh, but maybe this. And I think there are varying degrees of satisfaction, and some people might, get closer to it or feel like it's quite it. But if you've been through pain or you have a deep ask in your heart, you likely won't be able to scratch the itch through anything externally. It really is coming to know like you're home, like coming home to yourself. So where was I going with that? Oh, so when you're making decisions from your house, like from your home inside, the quality of them, like I was saying, is better, but also the quality of your experience all the time is higher. So it's the same as having like a good night's sleep and interacting with life, or having like several nights of shitty sleep and then trying to interact with life. Like, it doesn't have the same pixelation. It's not as crisp, it's not as alive. But if you're coming from yourself, then your actual experience of life is much higher. So all right, so we've got our circle. I've told you to give your weight over, or suggest that you practice giving your weight over to wherever you are. I pointed out the different depths of breathing, so you can breathe in your chest or you can breathe in your belly. I said about how what you think what you're doing with your mind, like why you wouldn't be able to be present in meditation, isn't quite real. And then I pointed out some of the reasons why you might want to connect with yourself, which is like what you think you're going to get outside, like really get inside, for one, and for two, the quality of what you can do when you're coming from like a place that is uniquely yourself. So one, like our personal experience gets separated, and we have what's natural to us, what we would do if we didn't know what we were supposed to do. And that would be the same as, imagine children in a classroom. The child would want to get up and move around, but the child has been trained that they have to sit down. And so that natural impulse of like, let me, exert energy, let me move my body, let me connect with my friends, has been trained to be suppressed. So our individuality provides for us impulses to follow so that we can act on what is correct for us, what our unique being needs at that time. And we've been suppressed to look, to behave in a way that looks familiar, to behave in a way that follows a track that makes sense to other people, or we've been conditioned to think that we couldn't possibly know what was right for us. And at different times in my evolution, it seemed like it was either or, like I'm living in the wild following my impulses, or I'm living in the world that's been trained. But they can kind of coexist. And so you can use, what's present for you with the world that exists. You don't have to run off into the woods and give up everything you've ever known. It's just a very subtle shift in like, what do I want right now? It's finding personal resonance with the choices in front of you. And they don't have to be big choices like where to live. It can really be as simple as like, what color do I want to wear today? Everything in this experience has a vibrational nature. There is no solidity. And I talk about, sort of like the illusion of my arm all the time, where I'm like, this shit isn't even solid. Like I can poke it as if it was, but I'm 99.9% empty space. I'm just stuff that's vibrating, and so is everything else. And there's not a random, there's not meaning, but there's also not randomness. And the color that you might be inspired to wear could have a vibrational component that was supportive of what you were going through at a heartbreak level, or like there is a wisdom to your inclinations, to your impulses, to your naturalness that we're told to push down and look for then the answer to our growth, the answer to our asking externally, but it's not there. It's not there. And you can tell that by looking at a bunch of things, but one would be just like the general health of our culture, the bodies in our world, and another would be like the lack of expression. You can kind of get tracked into these different lives that become comfortable on one level but are very uncomfortable on another, and ultimately require some level of like reconciliation to acknowledge like, okay, this actually doesn't feel good to me, I don't want to do this, to allow you to kind of like move off that path. But like I was just saying, you don't have to overturn your whole life if that's you. You just allow yourself to like shift lanes. So when I'm working with people on change, they usually, in their head, it's like, okay, how do I get from the first lane to the sixth lane, or what hard right do I need to make? And it's like, no. You just kind of like sit more deeply in the vehicle that you're in the lane that you're in, and allow it to guide and to shift very gently to the side. Change doesn't have to be, you don't have to dump all your Scrabble tiles back in. You can, and sometimes that's appropriate, and if you've been asking for it, sometimes it'll be dumped for you. But in general, you can allow the present to kind of bloom before you. You don't have to do anything to get started. You already are started. You're always right there. And it is just the allowance of that perspective, the bringing of right now to okay, rather than like trying to make like take okay to now. You recognize that now is okay, and from there all things are possible. So it's not how do I get somewhere, what do I need to figure out? It's like no, from here. So meditation isn't something that requires a lot of time. It doesn't require a lot of practice. It can, but I've said this a lot in my work, like you're already doing it. You do it all the time without thinking about it. Anytime that you are intensely present to whatever is happening, likely you don't notice you are because you're not there. Like you're at one with your experience. So you're giving your attention to your dog, you're painting, something, you're doing work. Like there is a at oneness. There isn't a concept of self that's removed and contemplating what is. You're dancing to the music. So I'll emphasize, like with meditation, you're already doing it. You're already great at it. Everybody's already doing it somewhere, somehow. And this is just an intentional application of those principles of that practice so that it feels more like you can go there anytime. So I did a presentation the other day and I was saying like it just takes 1 sec. Like it's only 1 sec to connect with yourself, and that's really all it is, because this world, as far as I can tell, is very intentional in nature. So if your intention is to connect with yourself, you can make that take 2 hours, you can make that take 10 minutes, you can make that take 1. And it's not the practice as much as the belief in the practice. So I'm going to let you borrow some of my belief there. And for right now, the takeaway of that would be remove all ideas you have about what meditation is and kind of pull it off the shelf and imagine that it's in a box and the box has a white label on it. So it's kind of like white labeled meditation. Allow yourself to write a new name for that on the box, so you're not taking with it anything that makes it seem hard for you or makes it seem like you can't or you're not. Like write something on the box that's like my favorite place or like quiet time. Whatever it is that's like removes the difficulty between you and the execution of this principle. Like let it be yours. So, and that's how I teach God as well, where it's not about taking God off like the church's altar and bringing him home. It's you have your own relationship to this thing. You never don't have your own relationship to this thing, but at what level are you conscious of it? What level have you claimed it? How much have you allowed your ownness there? So the last thing in getting started with meditation or like deepening your practice would set a timer for maybe 5 minutes. And when I first got started and someone was like, follow your breath, as you can imagine, I had a bit of activity up top, or I wouldn't, be teaching these things. I had a lot happening at a mental level, at a physical level. And if someone was follow your breath, I could follow it like this far into my body, and then I was off running somewhere else. So if that doesn't work for you, like leave that one go. The one that I like to play with the most is, if I didn't know how I should feel, how do I feel? And for that, I take my awareness and I just sort of like try to feel what's happening in my body the same way I would try to feel like if I was rummaging in my bag right now and I wasn't using my eyes, I'd say like, okay, like my notebook, an orange. Like you can reach in here and feel for things, and you know what they are based on how they feel with your, not eyes, with your hands, with your body. So with meditation, you can kind of do the same thing where you reach with your awareness. What does it feel like in my shorts? What does it feel like in my elbows? What do I feel like in the air around me? Like do almost a survey of yourself and just try to crawl like your physical area, that little circle that you drew for yourself in the beginning. What does it feel like here? If you didn't know that you should be upset about what they did, if you didn't know you should be worried about this thing that's coming, like how do you feel? And the way I just described it was more at a physical level, like what do your kneecaps feel like? What does your tailbone feel like? And that's one way to do it. But if you have developed a relationship or more awareness with your emotions, you can also look for those, like how do I actually feel? that was a really tough game for me at first. How do I really feel? Because I had a practice of like pushing that stuff aside and really just muscling through what was there. I would kind of approach through force, not really, it was more active than passive. And if you want your life to be easier, you have to learn a little bit to kind of like ease up off that active and allow for a little bit more passiveness. And you do that by beginning to like let yourself feel. What does this feel like to me? Well, this feels, how do I feel today? I feel a little, I kind of feel like a fuzziness. I feel a warmth. I feel my heart. I feel, so you kind of take yourself through like what's there for you, what do you feel, and set a timer if it's helpful, and do it for 4 minutes, do it for 6 minutes, and stay inside your circle, stay inside your body weight, give yourself over, like in this circle you are completely supported by life, so you allow everything to kind of relax, you drop your guards, you drop your questions, and you just connect and feel with yourself. Does anybody have any questions before I close today? If you watch the playback, I'd love to know if this was helpful or not. This practice of connecting with yourself takes you out of looking for a right answer. What should I do? And when you're using your head to try to navigate life, it's really hard right now because there's so much information that's conflicting. So you could find a very a peer-reviewed website about what this means and is and the reality of this, and then you can find one that's peer-reviewed that's like the exact opposite. And if you're trying to decide what's right for you based on the information outside, like, good luck. There's too much out there that's not you. And this practice of connecting with yourself is essentially underlining, like, I know what's right for me, I know what's right for me, I know what's right for me. And that feels like peace, that feels like freedom, that feels like confidence, that feels like the ability or the excitement to even go into the world so that you're not overwhelmed by all these pushes and pulls on your attention. Like, anytime there's information, it's essentially a sale. I'm selling you an idea right now. I'm not trying to sell it to you, but I'm giving you information in a way that's like, it could be convincing, and I try to point out where that's like very possible in my work. I'm always saying, like, do you, like, you're the you expert. But that's happening all the time. Like when your partner wants something, when there's a commercial, your boss, that all of those are competitions for your energy, for your attention, for your focus, and whatever you focus on, you give life to. So if you're just responding to those calls outside, you'll likely feel unfulfilled because you're not creating, you haven't owned that your experience is important. You haven't owned that this is yours too. So there's probably some subtle offness, and I can't emphasize enough that with all of these things, like I was saying with the now and the here, you don't have to go figure something out. You don't have to go get stuff, like, to hop in that seat. That seat's always now. Like, you always have the driver's seat. It's always yours, which means that at any moment there's one switch, and it's like on. I accept that I am in power. I accept that I am an aspect of the divine. I accept that life is mine, or it's not that. So it's just the one. So because of that simplicity, no matter what mess you're starting out in, no matter what level of disconnect, no matter what level of chaos, you can hop in that seat right now. Yes, it'll take some time to drive to a place that looks more familiar, perhaps, but perhaps not. And that means that you don't have to think that it's going to take a lot for you to feel better. You can flip the switch right now. And the switch is like, maybe this is okay. Maybe I accept myself. Maybe I can learn to love where I am. Maybe I can learn to let this be okay. Just that maybe this can be okay is the same as saying, like, on. I say yes. I say yes to life. All right. Thanks so much for coming in today. I hope everybody has a great day. If you have any questions from the playback, just put them in the comments.